Hi, I'm Georgie and this is my mum Sarah. We're two multi-creatives based in rural Victoria, Australia. We have an atelier-ceramics studio, Hope & Co, in a mid-century renovated garage. We make, paint, write and capture, and now we're taking you on our creative trails.
Hello everybody, we're back in the studio and we are going to be bringing you a little bit about our artistic process or our ceramic process.
At the start of a typical working day, we'll slip cast in the morning so pieces can set up in the moulds during the day. We love and use Walker Ceramics white earthenware casting slip, and this is not sponsored, but this is actually the last bucket of what we have before Mum, Sarah, picks up our order from Melbourne on Friday. When you start a new bucket, the clay is incredibly thick and clumped together, so we need to mix with our hand first to separate it enough before we use our mixer. We use a trusty paint mixer from our local hardware store and attach it to our drill, and it works incredibly well to blend the slip and get rid of lumps before we sieve. When using new slip, we need to sieve it 3 times through. This can be a lengthy and oftentimes a very messy process, but it makes for a better end product. We then use a kitchen spatula to work the clay through the sieves. And when it's ready, we pour it into the moulds. We'll then leave the clay to set up for a while. Depending on the size of the mould, the shape, and whether there's any moisture in the plaster from previous use, the amount of time we leave it can vary. We then tip them over a bucket to pour out the excess slip and leave them to set up for the rest of the day. When they are ready, we will remove the reservoir, which is the bit of clay that you can see at the end of the bunnies here. And then we'll smooth them out and let them set up and sponge them a little bit, and then they're ready to dry.
This is very much a part of our working week. We are in the studio bisque room, and here we've got clay at various stages. We have some bone dry clay here. When the clay comes in from the moulds or from our slab making or from the wheel, it comes into this room to dry. It's actually a very even temperature in here. It's quite temperature controlled. The room actually faces south, so it doesn't get any really direct sunlight or anything like that. So the temperature's a bit like having, I suppose, wine bottles in a cellar. So we like the even drying in here. When we first bring items out of their moulds, this is literally out of a mould. It's quite cold and damp to touch. It's actually a really beautiful phase because you can actually make changes to the clay either by sponging or fettling. And fettling is something which is the stage of the clay where you actually take off the seams with a tool or with your hand and a sponge, and you smooth the surface down. After about a week, the clay is called bone dry, and you can probably, actually I should show you the difference. So this is straight out of the mould, damp, cool to touch. This is dry, quite powdery, and bone dry, it's quite warm to touch as a comparison. As the pot loses moisture, it also becomes a little bit lighter. These are both quite heavy pieces, but this one definitely feels lighter to touch. So this is a piece that I have just finished forming, and it's still soft enough to actually still manipulate It's very cold to touch. The clays, this is a rustic dark clay that we use, and then we put an on-go, which is a white slip, over the top before we put colour and final glaze. But I just wanted to show you, this is probably the next stage of this clay. It still hasn't dried anymore to look at, but it's actually much stiffer, and I couldn't, if I was to actually bend that clay now, it would snap. These are some of our best-selling petal bowls, and they're for a wholesale order, and they will dry here for about a week before they're fired. Now at the end of that week there'll be this kind of colour, and you can see the difference between a wet one and one that's been drying here for about a week. Okay, now I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's gone through its bisque firing. So this has become this in its first firing. So it's a pale pink colour when it's fired to about 1032 degrees. The final phase is obviously as it comes into the shop after its second firing. It's been covered in an on-go slip to make the sort of terracotta clay a little bit whiter, and then we paint a glaze colour and a final glaze on the top, and this is one of the petal bowls in its finished form.
Masks aren't only for a global pandemic. Safety first while we're standing here in the studio today. Things don't really go to plan. Excuse me, Sarah, where are you going?
Perks of being your own boss. I'm going to have my hair cut. I only get it cut about every 4 months, so don't anyone criticise us for lack of consistency with our videos. I'm going to have my hair done.
Are you excited to be in the studio today? Yeah? Hi.
So we're back from our excursion looking at the kilns in a shed on a farm, and we are really quite excited about one of them.
It's pretty big too, like we've never seen anything like it. I am really excited because it's unlike any shape we've ever seen before. It was used for what was it? Something to do with glass.
Well, for glass, and so therefore we're not quite sure whether it will fire high enough. So we're going to do a little bit of investigating, but it's actually really big. It's about 1.5 meters by 500 millimeters, which is bigger than we've got at the moment, and probably more like the size of the kiln that we're actually waiting for from Canada. So crossing fingers.
It would just completely open up like our capability here in the studio, because we've had these massive platter molds. We've got these huge old vases that we want to turn into lamp bases and things, but we haven't been able to have a go at that yet because we haven't had the kiln space to do it, and we can't really justify turning on Bertha, our current kiln. You can tell everyone what she is.
Bertha is small but mighty, a bit like a small business, and if we want to grow and grow the business, then we need a bigger kiln, and so that's why we've ordered one from Canada, but I don't even know whether it has even left Canadian shores yet, so we're waiting patiently, but today was a bit exciting, so we're going to investigate a bit further. This is just a plastic table mat that I found in a $2 shop. $2 shops are brilliant for clay. It's an orange. I am compressing the clay with my trusty little credit card or SIM card. Ceramicists use ribs generally, which are quite expensive. An old credit card or similar is absolutely fantastic because it just costs nothing, so it works just as well. So I don't have plaster molds for all of my bowls, and I actually enjoy going to $2 shops or op shops and finding bowl shapes I like, and I'm sure this was some relic of the 70s, but it's a great shape. So what I do, I've tried everything. I've tried spraying with vegetable oil, I've tried newspaper, I've tried Glad wrap or cling wrap if you're somewhere else in the world. All of the cling wrap tends to leave wrinkles. And I discovered just by chance one day when I'd run out of cling film or Glad wrap that I went to the $2 shop and got a big roll of this Chucks, and I place this over the bowl, and then so that it's got a fairly even coverage. So in this case I've got two pieces. Why do I need that? Well, if you're using plastic, this clay is going to stick to it and it won't come off. Plaster, for instance, or a bisque mould will suck the moisture out of the clay and the clay shrinks and you'll be able to remove it. But with plastic, no, that isn't the case. You'll end up with a very cracked bowl. So if you're setting out and you're not using plaster, make sure you have something in between that the bowl won't stick to. So today I'm making some slab constructed bowls for the last of an order, actually a couple of orders, and I don't have the perfect hump mold, which is this form. Slump is when you actually slump clay into a mold. I'm using a hump mold, which is obviously self-explanatory really, and it takes some time just to literally get the clay to sit where you want it to. So now I'm scoring, which is really important when you are joining a foot, and I'm using a pottery tool to do this. You can use a toothbrush, you can use anything, but I love this little tool. It's just got a little tooth in it. If I can clean some of the dirty clay off it, you can just see that it's got tiny little teeth, and it's perfect. So this was a tip that I actually got from the fabulous potter in America, a woman called Jessica Putnam Phillips. These are, you stick these into corn cobs, and all I've done is actually spread them. Now, Jessica's idea is just brilliant. Basically, I just use the corn proddy thing, whatever they're called, which you can get at a $2 shop, and it costs next to nothing to get a packet of them. And you split the teeth of the metal apart, and they're really strong because corn cobs are pretty tough themselves. And what you do is you create a foot for the bowl that is actually, once you split these pieces apart, it creates an angle. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to slip in a minute, but then you can join the foot on like so, and it's slightly smaller at the top and wider at the bottom. So this is just literally a little bit of leftover powdered clay made into a very loose slip. And after scoring, I'm going to slip. Okay. And then I don't know how I fluked that, but it was actually the perfect length. But normally, if they overlap, I actually put one over the other. Perhaps I might show you that. So I managed to do that one perfectly. So if it was to overlap, I'm just going to show you if I was making a smaller foot and it was overlapping. The very best way to actually get the perfect join is to cut straight through, taking out the excess, and ta-da, you'll get a perfect join. Is on the right angle. So once I've actually joined the foot ring on this particular bowl, then I want to make sure that the bowl is actually connected to the foot ring nice and securely, that it's nice and smooth, that I'm happy with the circular form of it. Run my finger along there just to make sure I'm happy with that. And then I'm going to pop out Maker's Stamp in, made by Firefly Giftware in Australia, who do an amazing job. So what next?
I'll be cleaning the studio like a busy bee for our flash sale this Saturday, which will actually have been by the time you all watch this vlog on Sunday. But Mum is making a special trip to Melbourne.
I am. We're actually changing our clay, and I put an order for a big lot of clay. We're going into mid-fire, so it'll be better suited to functional pieces in the kitchen, especially. High-fired ceramics are what you generally see in kitchens and restaurants, cafes, whatever. So we are filling a few commissions, and we want to do this in another clay. So I've actually ordered it, and it was going to cost an absolute fortune to get here. And so I've decided to go to Melbourne. I'm delivering a painting. A sale I made a couple of weeks ago of my London Magnolias 2. I just have to go back to London so I can do series 4, 5 and 6 one day. But for the moment I'm delivering the painting, picking up this huge clay supply and coming back after the weekend.
If you enjoyed this episode, please comment down below, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, as it helps us bring more great content to you. Be sure to turn on your notification bell so you are first in the know when we upload a new episode. Thank you so much for watching and supporting us, and we'll see you very soon. Bye.